Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the July installment of the Surplus Store and Recycling Center Town Hall. My name is Katie Deska, and I'm the Education Coordinator here. Today, we are streaming this event live on Facebook, as well as recording it on Zoom. So you're going to be welcome to drop any questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And today we're going to hear from our staff about updates to our store, the recycling operation, and what's new with our worm composting operation. So we're joined today with three other members of staff. Would you each like to please introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. I'm James Ives. I am the sales manager for the Surplus Store and Recycling Center, and I'm glad to be here with y'all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hewitt, and I am an operations coordinator for the Recycling Center and Surplus Store.
Good morning out there. I am Sean Barton. I am the diversion coordinator and resident worm wizard, overseeing the material recovery facility, the actual recycling center itself, and the worm composting facility that we'll give you some updates on soon. Welcome.
Sean, can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, I will. I'll speak louder next time. I'm Sean Barton, worm wizard and composter, diversion coordinator.
Great, thank you. So we started these town halls about a year ago while we were in the early phases of what turned into be a long stretch of the pandemic. And we are excited now to offer you some updates on what's been going on at the Surplus Store and the Recycling Center, in addition to our food waste diversion program, which we call vermicomposting. So just going to give a brief overview about our facility and our programming for anyone who is not yet familiar with the different aspects of what we do. So at the Surplus Store Recycling Center, we manage MSU's waste as a resource. Each year, we process between 20 to 25 million pounds of material, and it's material that's been discarded by the MSU community or at our public recycling drop-off center. On campus, the material comes from places such as our academic buildings, office buildings, event spaces, residence halls, and our MSU farms, plus some extension locations across the state. So when we think about what we do, oh, I'm sorry, forgive me. So I want to just clarify that we have three pieces of our operation, the reuse, the recycling, and our vermicompost piece. And in order to make this possible, we have to work closely with IPF's custodial services, as they play a central role in getting the material that you drop in the bin to our facility through the loading docks. So we have a staff of drivers and a fleet of trucks who will bring the material from the building loading docks back to our site, where it's then taken to one of three places. Our surplus goods will go to the surplus store for resale or upcycling. The recyclables will go to the materials recovery facility, where they are sorted, baled, and then shipped out to be turned into recycled content. And our food waste, which comes mostly from the kitchens at the residence halls, goes to the hoop house that was installed on site last summer, which Sean will talk more about. And the vermicompost is turned into a nutrient-rich soil amendment that we then resell in the surplus store. So today you'll hear from a few of us about what's new in our respective areas, and you'll also get a chance to see a few photos, and hopefully will entice you to swing by and visit us either through the store or in the future at a tour, or maybe just a class visit. We have roughly 40 staff who help this place run, and we're looking forward to hiring more student staff in the future. We have a variety of operations, and it really does take a village to raise this child that we call the Surplus Store Recycling Center. So when we think about what we do and we talk about managing waste as a resource, the question might be, well, why? Why is that the perspective that we take here? And this could obviously be a very long discussion, but for the purpose of today, we're just focusing on, what's come to be known as the triple bottom line. We work to preserve the value of the material of the things that we collect. And in doing so, we practice stewardship of natural resources as well as MSU's financial resources. While doing that, we also make a positive social impact. It's been known that there's additional economic opportunities in waste diversion rather than in landfilling. And we also have, the health benefits related to air, water, and soil quality. When we, want to simplify our mission into terms that everyone understands, we talk about rethinking, reducing, reusing, recycling, and composting, and landfilling as a last resort. So the key here is that we do these things in order. And we start at the top by rethinking our relationship to consumption, use, and discarding of objects and materials. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Chris Hewitt, who's going to provide some highlight and some data points over the past year. Chris?
Thanks, Katie. So as Katie mentioned earlier, that we collect usually about 20 to 25 billion pounds a year on campus. But as you probably can guess, the last year was kind of an anomaly for us. We collected about just shy of only about 12 million pounds, so about half of what we normally would do. Now, this right here is an academic review of our academic calendar year for 2021, which would have been July 2020 through June of last month. That's the the calendar year that we operate on. And as you can see from the pie chart, 6.7 million of that nearly 12 million was trash that went to the landfill. But through that, though, we were still able to divert over 5 million pounds of discarded material. And that equates to about $65,000 that we saved in landfill fees and an estimated 265 trips to the landfill. Now, of this waste that we picked up, that was 44% of it we were ultimately able to divert from the landfill. And that is what we call our diversion rate. And now the diversion rate is the percentage of material that is redirected from the landfill by being recycled, composted, or reused. So those are the three streams that Katie talked about when we pick something up, the route that it goes. And we're at 44%. As you see, we have been slowly climbing since recycling was instituted on campus in the late 80s, early 90s. And we have an ultimate goal as a university to achieve a 70% diversion rate. And we're happy to announce that in the past year, we had 19 buildings across campus that achieved this goal, and 47 had at least 50% of their waste diverted from the landfill. So we're slowly getting there, and we're seeing the success. And last but not least, for those of you who are patrons of our drop-off center, we collected over 1 million pounds in the last year. So even with our reduced schedule, we still average over 100,000 pounds a month. So thank you for your continued patronage, and now and for being patient with us. And it is now back open to 7 days a week, 24/7, with a small asterisk that we are closed on weekdays 7 to 9 a.m. so we can service those bins to so you have more room for your material. And next, I believe, is going to be James with some updates on the surplus store.
Thank you, Chris. Excuse me. All righty, surplus store. Well, we're unique. You can, next slide, please. We're unique in that we receive anything and everything that a small city can no longer need, use, or want, as MSU is. And we can provide online and in-store shopping. Next slide, please. Sorry. All right. When you shop with us, it's a great example of reuse. It's my favorite of the R's, reuse. What is it in science? What does it mean? Reusing in environment, health, and safety, or waste prevention terminology, means using an object or resource material again for either the same purpose or another purpose without changing the object structure in a significant way. And it is to be differentiated from recycling based on this. Why? Why should we reuse? Well, it saves or delays purchasing on disposal costs, conserves resources, reduces a waste stream, causes less pollution than recycling or making new products from virgin materials, prevents pollution caused by reducing the need to harvest new materials, saves energy, reduces greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global climate change, helps sustain the environment for future generations, saves money, and you know what? It's fun. You know, finding that diamond in the rough can be exciting, really is. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Oh, we're good. So what do we have for sale? It's easier to say what we don't. We probably sold everything that you can imagine with the exception of an airplane and real estate. We just don't have it all at once. It's always an ever-changing inventory. At the end of June, though, we had a total of 20,562 items in our online store available to purchase, and that number is growing every day. This past year has been pretty interesting to say the least, and it couldn't not have been possible without our dedicated staff. And I just wanted to take some time to put a name to the face of our frontline staff that do help make all this possible. Aaron Cookingham, he's the assistant store manager. He's our Swiss Army knife of everything possible. Sarah Heckerman, she's the online store manager. She keeps the craziness organized. Michael Chapman, he's our main cashier and liaison between the different departments on campus that we sell stuff for. And on the right there is our very own scrap metal Sparty. Lance Young. Lance is more behind the scenes, but is an important, very important cog in the wheel of our processes. And he's responsible for making sure we look as good as we do. Bryant Moose Schmidt, as you can see, he's becoming quite the family man, but between juggling 3 kids, one of which was just weeks old there, little Breslin, he manages to help us list items online and keeps our customers coming back for more. Dave Radigan, you'll find him behind our customer service counter, ready to help out with any IT questions or any store questions for that matter. He's a wealth of knowledge for us. Marty Salazar. During COVID, we had the opportunity to have Marty join us on the sales side of our operation. He normally drives for us, but this has given us the opportunity for him to show us his expertise for his great customer service. Riley Davidson is a recent grad from MSU and has stayed on with us to share his passion for sustainability. Anna Young, she's got a lot of experience throughout our entire operation, and we're lucky she's sharing her knowledge for retail and her organization skills. Mike Thomas, he works a lot with our media that we get in. You know, if you have a book question, he's the one to ask, or sports or stocks, or you name it. Nick Apap, he's the newest addition to the Surplus family. He's an electrical engineering major and is helping us with our online listing and customer service. Again, I just wanted, to thank you for letting me share our staff with you. I just think it's important for you to know who we are when you're here. So it just kind of helps put a name to the faces that we have. So what's new with us? Many of you have been asking why appointments? During COVID, we implemented a new point of sale system, and with people not being here for over a year, we knew if we opened the doors, we would just get inundated with customers, which usually isn't a bad thing, but with the new systems that we have in place, we just wanted to make sure that our T's were crossed and our I's were dotted. And with the appointments, that just kind of helped with a soft opening, if you will. However, the appointment shopping is done, but I just wanted to explain to you a little bit why we did that. The appointment shopping will be implemented for departments. If you are shopping for your department with an MSU account number, while we're closed to the public, we'll set it up so where you can just make an appointment and come on in. But until we get that implemented, we'll just ask them to call and arrange a time to come on in and take a look around. The layout is a little bit different. The old furniture room, which is now our online storage room, it's everything in there is listed online and can be purchased from your home anytime you want. When we're open to the public, you still will be able to go in there. We'll just, before you do, we just want to explain, a little bit about the process in there. We'll just ask that you don't pull any tags or move any furniture around, because again, it is all inventoried items that is online, but we will help you through that process. Here's probably what you all have been waiting for. When are we open to the public? Fridays, going forward. Fridays from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. No appointment necessary. We're currently putting a lot of emphasis on providing online shopping, and we'll see how this goes, and if needed, we can always add more days to be open to the public. Our online shopping and curbside pickup is going to remain the same. You can buy something online and pick it up curbside from 8 o'clock until 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. with the exception on Wednesdays. That is until 5:40 p.m. So why less in-person hours? Well, during the pandemic, we were forced to change the way we do things, right? We had to learn a whole new system or a whole new way of doing business. And we're now trying to incorporate the old with the new, if you will. We also had to cut staffing, which we're not back to where we were a year and a half ago, and we probably won't be for a while, if at all. But we are working on finding that right balance between in-person and online shopping while we are still providing our best customer service. Also, online shopping, online secondhand shopping is projected to grow 69%. With more consumers seeking bargains from home, people are becoming more comfortable buying used items, with the age group between 18 and 37 who prefer used goods over new, which is 2.5 times more than other generations. So hopefully we're going to get in on that. The secondhand market is also set to hit $64 billion in the next 5 years, with more and more online thrift stores becoming increasingly popular, There's ThredUp, Poshmark, Swap.com, Depop, and The Real, just to name a few. Reuse is other opportunities to reuse with us. Our free area. This is the last chance before it gets recycled or landfilled. It's out front next to the large S in the store entrance. It's not the whole awning. We want to make sure you understand that. It's just a designated area with the signs and the flags. You can kind of see, the two signs there, but we do have the ability to expand that as needed. And again, you just never know what you might find. It stands true. One individual's junk is definitely another's treasure. And that's available anytime the gates open, really, usually between Friday or Monday through Friday, 8 to 3:30. Excuse me. Another opportunity, the community reuse program is coming back. Community reuse, if you're affiliated with MSU, whether you're faculty, staff, alumni, student, fan, it's an opportunity for you to bring in items from home that still have some life left, some value. You just don't want to throw it away. It's an opportunity for you to help out with reuse. The link that Chris provided will show you what we can and can't accept. Again, you can drop off your items Monday through Friday, 8 to 3:30 at the north side of the building at the merchandise pickup door, which again is at the north end of the building. This service is free with the exception of a $10 fee for TVs and monitors. Spartan Upcycle, the creative reuse branch of the Surplus Store and Recycling Center. Upcycling involves rethinking typical notions of value and worth. What one might see as junk, another might see a new, different chair or what have you. It's what you can do with it. To upcycle is to create something that is needed or wanted from stuff, in quotes, that is otherwise unwanted. Spartan Upcycle has two primary focuses here. Education, which is through workshops, demonstrations, and partnerships. And the other would be retail through the store of upcycled products and materials that you can use for upcycle projects. We have some items currently online for sale, and we do look forward to adding more as we progress in this. Everything we do sell or use is collected through recycling and surplus operations. But while we're in somewhat of a state of rebooting the program, we do have an exciting announcement for you all. Coming soon, the Spartan Upcycle by Art Lab residency. Beginning this August, a Detroit-based artist, Megan Harris, will use the Broad Art Lab here on campus as a studio to create a body of work using primarily materials collected by MSU Surplus and Recycling. It's an 8-week artist in residency, which begins late in August and runs through mid-December. This will culminate in an exhibition on display in late fall, so keep your eyes out for that. We're really excited to see what comes of this. And hopefully this will likely encourage us all to rethink our definition of value and waste, right? It helps to illustrate the perspective and mission that drives what we do here at SSRC, which is to manage waste as a resource. The collaboration between the Spartan Upcycle and the Broad Art Lab, excuse me, is the topic of our next town hall, which is scheduled for August 26th. So tune in for that for more exciting updates on that. Looking forward to that. And, you know, for other updates as we move along, feel free to, that's a bad one. Feel free to check out our website or the newsletter that we put out once a week. Our social media through Facebook, Twitter, just get involved, and hopefully you'll find some more good information from this. Or if you just have a question, just give us a call or shoot us an email and we'll do our best to help you out. With that, we're going to go back to Katie, and she's going to provide us all with some valuable information on the changes in our plastic recycling. Katie?
Thanks, James. Everybody, first I want to acknowledge the fact that some of our slides have gotten distorted in the download process. You love to use Office 365 so that we can collaborate with everyone. And I see that we, did the download and they did not turn out well. So I apologize for that error. Hopefully you can follow along with us by just listening in if you can't see some of the text or if some of the photos are covering that up. So to discuss the recycling updates, we're just going to hone in on plastics. That's the only stream that has changed coming this fall. And the topic of plastics causes quite a lot of head scratching. We have to be honest here and acknowledge the fact that when it comes to recycling, plastics are the most difficult material to what we say recycle right. And the reason why is because there's already 7 different types of plastic resins. And that number of actual real life plastic types, to put it simply, is multiplied by 2 factors. One is the additives that are added that are put into plastic resins, and 2 is the dyes. So the additives are great. They are what make plastics so variable and allow us to use them for things like bumpers to the car to protect us, that nice rigid plastic, all the way to something like a flexible tubing that can be used as, the tube of an IV. And then there's all of the various types of plastic that is used to manufacture the packaging that, holds a lot of our convenience foods. So the amount of plastics is both a benefit to us as a society who do greatly rely on plastics, but it's also a hindrance to simple, clean, easy recycling. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about now. Essentially at MSU, we've switched to urging people to consider their plastic items by the shape of what it is. We used to talk about the plastic numbers, the resin codes, what number was that plastic item affiliated with based on the number it was at the bottom of the container. Now we're urging people to just focus on the shape. So essentially the change comes down to restriction of plastics to simply bottles and tubs. Bottles and tubs are the only items we're taking. If the item that you want to recycle is not a bottle or a tub, please keep it out of our plastics recycling bin. We'll go into detail in a moment about what those look like. And again, focus on the shape of the container. There's no need to check for what number it is on the bottom. If you've been recycling with us since COVID, this won't be too much of a change. And if you've been recycling with us pre-COVID, this will be a reduction in what you can recycle in terms of plastics. So when will this change take place? We are currently re-signing all of the collection points on campus. So we have thousands of bins, and this is going to take some time. So we've started the process over the summer, and it will be completed as soon as possible. And if you're confused about what to recycle, we just encourage you to continue looking at that sign. Just follow the sign for guidance about what you can put in the bin. We're currently adapting our internal operations in order to meet this change in what we accept. And the MSU Recycling Drop-Off Center, which is open to the public, it will reflect these changes beginning in mid-September. So other items that are not accepted can be boiled down to plastic bags, polystyrene, and miscellaneous plastics items. Those are a couple big things that you want to keep out of the bin moving forward. Plastic bags are best taken to a grocery store for recycling. Polystyrene foam can also be brought back to us through our community reuse program. And there's information about that on the MSU surplus store website. And there's a link to it on the recycling website. So there's outlets for those two items, but they do not belong in the recycling bins that you see on campus or at our drop-off center. And same goes for miscellaneous plastic items. Those are not accepted anymore. And we'll talk about why that is in just a second. So what is a bottle and what is a tub? Well, a bottle is one of the most straightforward things that we use here, or that we're recycling now. So a bottle, this is a shampoo bottle. This is a plastics, just water bottle. And then we have one like this, which is like from a vitamin bottle. So in a nutshell, it has a narrower neck and a wider base, oftentimes has liquid in it. And a tub is defined as a circular or square or oblong shaped container. It might have a snap-on lid. So a lot of times it's for items like this is yogurt, cottage cheese, butter, things like that, that are held in these containers. And then also these takeout containers, or these containers that come from the bulk bins, and other short sort of tubs that fit the description would be something like this coffee canister. So in terms of why we have to make the change, it boils down to the fact that recyclables are a commodity just like any other item on the market. And we have to respond to the market demand. Otherwise, we don't have an outlet for these materials. So there is strong and consistent market demand for certain plastics, and those are the ones that we're focusing on collecting now, including HDPE milk jugs, PET and HDPE bottles, and polypropylene tubs. The specifics in terms of those acronyms and those phrases, you don't need to know that. We have the information on our website, and we're adding more to that for those of you who do want to dive in a little bit deeper and understand more about the complexities of recycling plastics. But for now, just know that we're making this change so that we can confidently let you know that what you recycle with us will indeed be sent to a processor to then be turned into post-consumer recycled content and hopefully picked up in place of virgin material to be, turned into new consumer goods and materials. or business to business materials. So the materials that we send, we focus on keeping them, that we send out for processing, we focus on keeping them within our region. And right now we're sending them to Indiana and to Ohio, and other plastics go down to Alabama and Canada. So it depends on which type of resin that we're looking at, and whether or not it's a mixed bale or it's a bale of just one type of material. Different processors, are focused on different types of resin, so that they can then, work directly with a buyer who's going to uptake that material, those pellets, into something new. So that's basically what happens. They get sent to a processor that gets that uses a shredder. They will clean the plastic, shred it down, and then they pelletize it, and that's what is then turned into new plastic products that are made from recycled content. So in terms of the specifics that you want to look out for, one of the big problems is what we call in the industry, and what we're teaching you here today, and you might know already, is a clamshell. It gets this name because it looks like a clam. It opens with a hinge. So an example is this plastic strawberry container, which is getting lost in my virtual background. And these clamshells are commonly used for fresh produce like strawberries, tomatoes, things like that. They might also be used for, this was an example of an egg carton. So you can see these for different uses, but the main thing you want to look for is the hinge. If it's a hinge, then it's not considered a tub, it's considered a clamshell, and we don't want those in our stream. So aside from the way that it looks, how is a clamshell any different from a tub? So in terms of the composition, clamshell containers are made from a variety of plastics, including polystyrene, PET, HDPE, or not HDPE, PVC, and other types. And the containers are made in a process called thermoforming, whereas bottles and jugs are made by blow molding. And the different processes result in different grades of plastic material that have their own specific uses. And plastics that are made from these different processes cannot be easily recycled together. And that's the distinction, is that they cannot be recycled, processed, through the same technology. So that's why we do not want those in our stream, even though they might oftentimes look just like a tub to a lot of us. They are different in their chemical composition. And for that reason, we don't want them to gum up the rest of our clean stream of high value recyclable items. So to recap, bottles and tubs only. It sounds simple, but there's definitely a gray area in recycling, and we'll have to work through that. This is going to be a learning process for all of us as we try to simplify something that is quite complex when you start looking at the nuances. If it's not a plastic bottle or a tub, please go ahead and keep that out of our recycling stream. And some of the things to look for as a reminder: plastic bags, clamshells, and styrofoam. All of those are no items. So when we are, going through this change, we know that there's going to be a lot of headache from, everybody involved, including us here who are trying to explain it in a clear fashion for everybody, ourselves included, who are recycling on campus, trying to figure out which goes in the bin and which doesn't. And so, we want to take this as an opportunity to be as transparent about plastics recycling as possible. There is a lot of confusion around it, and there are some plastics that are harder to recycle than others based on the technology that's available right now. More innovation is underway, and that's exciting to see what kind of opportunities are going to come down in the future. But right now, we have to stick with what we have markets for, and that's why we're asking you to minimize the contamination in our recycling bin and focus just on recycling your tubs and your bottles with us. So when in doubt, please keep it out of the bin. Please avoid wish cycling, which is when you throw something in the bin, you hope it'll get recycled, but you're not sure. If you don't know that it's accepted, please just hold that out of the bin. It saves us on labor costs and disposal costs. And also please avoid sloppy recycling, which is, essentially when you don't empty out your beverage or your, food packaging, that causes contamination in our stream, and that can bring the value of our material down. And so we want to avoid that. So please empty, rinse, and or wipe out any excessive food or beverage or other residue from your plastic items and every other type of plastic or container that you recycle with us, whether that's metal or glass or whatever. So I just want to say that we are with you in the frustration and the challenges around plastics recycling, but we want to express that your efforts are greatly appreciated, and we do encourage you to stay in touch with us on social media or an email and continue to ask us questions when you are confused, because we want to learn a better way to express these guidelines to you. And this is going to be a good opportunity for us to talk more about the greater issues at hand when it comes to recycling in general. And as always, continue to focus on those ways that you can reduce your reliance on single-use plastics. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sean Barton, who will talk to us about the food waste program. Sean?
Yes, hello everyone. Happy to be joining you now, and thank you for passing it off to me, Katie. And yeah, there's a lot of challenges with that recycling, and as one that sorts it myself, even sometimes we're confused and a lot changes, and we appreciate everyone's patience and asking us questions on when in doubt to recycle it. So, but I do want to talk about food waste and a little bit about worms, and let's get wiggly about it. So we've almost completed our first year at the vermicomposting facility. It was started in October 2020. So, the Spartan worms help us go green, and there's my hand with some worms in it. That's a normal shot. So we use red wiggler worms. They're a little bit smaller than your average night crawler, and they're a composting worm, a different type of worm, whereas earthworms and night crawlers and stuff burrow deep within the soil. These ones stay more on the surface and eat a whole lot of food waste, provided they have optimal conditions. And we'll show you how we have optimal conditions at our facility on the next slide here. So here is our current worm wedge. At Surplus, what we have is two wedges that we have, one on the north side, one on the south side, and they just look like piles of dirt, but I assure you there are hundreds of thousands. I always say millions, but probably 300 to 500,000 is a conservative estimate for how many worms we have in those two wedges, and you can't even see them. Worms don't like sunlight. You see that we have a big shade cloth on this hoop house that's up there, and that helps keep the sun off of it, because it gets really hot. I mean, it hit like 120 in our hoop house before we had that shade cloth on, and we put that shade cloth on in late April. So it makes a huge difference. Worms like darkness, they like moisture, and they like nutrient-rich environment. And that's what we provide with the food waste that we have here. So what we kind of do is we mix leaves with food waste and let it compost for a couple of days. We have a 3-pile system where we kind of manage it. And then we get that food very microbially active at the end. And that food waste is then fed to the worms, and the worms process it further to make a nutrient-rich soil amendment in vermicompost. The worms don't actually eat the decaying food itself. They eat the microbes growing on the food. So moldy apples and that sort of stuff is really good. And I wanted to share some of our data here. We've composted at this point, and if you included June, 101,000 pounds of food waste through the worms at our facility, which is a heck of a lot when you think about what the size of those little worms were in my hand and what they could do. If you look, the anaerobic digester still does do a whole lot more for food waste than what we currently do. They have a little bit more higher tolerances on what they can take. They can take the meats, the cheeses, oils, and greases and stuff like that, whereas the worms are a little bit more vegetarian with their diet. So the landscape services nursery still takes lots of soil and brush and trees and logs, and those are all very heavy things. So we still, think the worms are competing with the rest of the areas in the organic diversion profile that MSU has for food waste and other organics recycling. But the worms are honestly still hungry. They want more food. We have a very low population on campus right now with only about 400 people living on. And I'm looking forward to seeing what these worms can do once we unleash the beast and let them really wiggle around. So want to show next slide about how much they've grown over the last few bits. So when they've before we show that, I want to talk about harvesting vermicompost, because we have to sell the stuff when we get done. So this is over at the Hort farm, where we have to harvest the wedge where the worms live. They live in the edge of the wedge that we keep moist, and then the back end of the wedge, this is where our staff is, with Julia, Reg, and Rob, and Dave helping us as well with harvesting vermicompost. So you can see at first that wedge goes all the way to those blocks. It's about 18 inches tall, and we slowly have to scuffle hoe or stir up hoe it to break up the clumps, make it better for soil, better soil amendment ultimately, because no one likes a clumpy compost. And slowly we were able to bag this up. We harvested about 11 yards in about 2 hours or so. So I mean, it was done by shovel and wheelbarrow, and that's what the Hort farm does. Is we do everything by shovel and wheelbarrow for the most part there. Whereas at the surplus store, we're doing it with hydraulics and the Bobcat, and we're trying to scale up the operation. So. Now the next slide here is our wedges and what we have scaled up at the surplus store. So we started with these small crates that are on the far left here. Moving over, we then finally built the wedge in the second picture over. In the third center, we had to see the crates on top of the wedge again. We've kind of infused worms multiple times, and that has been very helpful to make the population go up right before winter. And you see kind of under where my head may be, but we have the wedge covered. In January, we have to cover the wedge and make a hoop within a hoop to keep the worms warm, because they obviously can freeze and they just slow down. And as you see in some of my data at the bottom there, they like warmer temperatures, but when it does get cold, they just kind of slow down and go into a hibernation like state that just they don't eat as much, which is kind of contrary to the school year when food waste is and when our worms are most active. So our worms are most active in the summer, and they want to eat the most in the summer, but that's when I have the least amount of people on campus, most time they're in the winter. So we have to manage that, and that's a dance that we have to do as the wedges get bigger. And you see the wedge just keeps growing, and we're hoping to be able to harvest about 20 yards of vermicompost in the next few weeks here. And I think that was it for my slide. I probed around, and the lowest temperature I recorded in that wedge was 41 degrees in the middle of winter. So it's amazing what passive solar greenhouse can do to keep your area warm.
Thank you so much, Sean. So we're going to move into a question and answer here in just a moment. But for anyone who wanted to skedoodle early, we wanted to be sure to provide you with our token of appreciation, a 15% off coupon good at the surplus store. That coupon code is up at the top, and Chris is going to drop that in the link for you as well. The details for the use of the coupon will be shared with you in our follow-up email after the webinar. Also a plug for our upcoming town hall next month. We're really excited to hone in on the partnership between Spartan Upcycle and the Broad Art Lab. So that will be the topic for the August 26th town hall, which again will be held on a Thursday at 11 a.m. Also would like to encourage anyone who's interested in getting involved more. If you're a faculty and staff member, please check out our Waste Warriors program. This is an education and training program that allows for us to provide you with tips and information that encourages you to make waste-related behavior change and leads to reduced waste on campus and in your personal life. We also have two newsletters, one for the Waste Warrior program and one for the surplus store, which allows you to get awareness of what sales are coming down, in that upcoming week, and what kind of highlighted items we have to show you. So that's going out almost weekly, and you can sign up for that on the surplus store website. Also, we're on social media on Facebook and Instagram, and Chris is also going to share those handles with you in the chat. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our audience. So you are invited to drop in your questions to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer your questions. and just stay with us as long as you'd like. And we look forward to seeing everybody, hopefully at our store in person when you're comfortable, or maybe at a future event or two, or here at the recycling side of things. So let's see if we have any questions so far.
Katie, we have one question that was in the chat for Sean.
Sure.
The worms don't actually eat the food. How does that work to decrease the food that is there?
Yes. Okay. So the food gets all sorts of microbes going on it, bacteria, protozoa, molds, funguses, and that sort of stuff. And the worms eat that. So the fungus, mold, bacteria breaks down the food. So the food is being digested into something that the bacteria start, digesting, and then the worms eat the bacteria and the stuff growing on top of it, which then ultimately, results in less food for that bacteria. The bacteria eat some more, and that cycle just kind of chases. So the worms are kind of the predators, I guess you could say, or in the food chain. They are at least above where the microbes are, but they are low on the food chain for everything else, because we all know the early birds get the worms and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers the question. That the worms, they don't really take bites out of the apple. They're more eating the mold on the apple, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that one, Sean. I think that's interesting. You definitely, at first think that they're just chomping away, but when you put it like that, a worm eating an apple, yeah, seems more practical. They'd eat the microbes on it. I do see a couple questions about lids when it comes to recycling plastics. So lids are fine to include. If it's a plastic lid on a plastic item, that is acceptable. You can leave those on your items. If the lid is of a material that is not the same as, the base, or is not easily recycled, that will be dealt with in the processing after the items leave our facility. So to answer that is fine. You can leave lids on. We do prefer that you leave any water bottle caps, for instance, on your water bottles rather than taking them out and putting them in the bin separately. They are so small. We have, it takes from the bin to the truck to the MRF material recovery facility floor to the sort line to the bale, to the truck, etc. They can easily get lost. So it's best if you just leave those on. And I see we have another question about cups, and that is a good point. We are working that through with our broker right now, who helps us to market our recyclables. The the stack of cups that Sean showed us the other day really speaks to the fact that it's not as simple as, is it a cup that's accepted or not? There's a variety of cups, but we will be able to give you a definitive answer of whether or not we want cups in the recycling bin or not. Just bear with us until we're able to get to the answer of that question, and we will have that information included in our guide.
Katie, we have another question from Facebook. This one is for Sean. With the vermicomposting, will community members be able to bring food to the drop-off center?
I have a dream of food waste bin over at the drop-off center, and think eventually we may be there, but we are likely years away from something to that scale. We are piloting a small bucket club within our building currently that we are hoping to expand to the greater MSU wastewater community eventually here. And then after that, we would expand it to the public to be able to drop off. There are many bucket clubs that are successful that, you either charge per month for buckets or per the bucket. And then I've seen some where you get vermicompost buckets after, giving me 10 buckets of compost or food waste or something like that. So there are methods out there. We are exploring that. I would like to, if you're really interested, we do have a list of a couple people that we're keeping names on, but we're probably still at least a year away before we're taking stuff from the public. If you work on campus, I'd say we're a lot closer to that. If you work in our building, we're already doing it, and you could join the pilot bucket club right now, but I need to make sure I can get the process down, deal with contamination and the variety of food stocks that I might have from the outside campus community that I need to be able to process and maintain that, and maintain a healthy worm population on top of everything else. So yes, eventually I do believe that we'll have that. Will we have a big roll off for food waste over at the drop off center? Yeah, it smells kind of funny over there. So I don't know if that will happen, but I think we may have something that we're going to work towards over there.
Thanks for that, Sean. And I see that Chris dropped a couple links in the chat, one including some information about how you can learn to compost at home if you'd like. So there's some suggestions there for using a compost pile, using a tumbler, or using a top load compost bin. And one of our waste warriors who's in the extension department was kind enough to share some of her tips on how she handles her compost with kind of a set it and forget it method. So you can check that out if you'd like. And on that site link, there is some more information and some photos about our vermicompost operation that Sean oversees. Are there any other questions? Feel free to put them in the Q&A box, or remind us if we missed anything from the chat that you asked.
We'll say one thing I forgot to mention was the plug to buy the vermicompost at the surplus store. It's $20 a bucket on sale right now that you can start using it at home if you don't already produce your own compost. It's a great soil amendment, and you'll have amazing plants with using it properly, which is not very hard. And it's a way that you can help close the food loop here at MSU.
And Chris has got that link in the chat for you as well. Give it a couple, another minute or so here, just in case anyone thinks of a question. In terms of the next town hall, we will put the information out to you in that follow-up email as well, so that you can register if you'd like, just to let you know.
I've got a question for Sean. Is there a shelf life for the vermicompost?
We have found that if you re-moisten the vermicompost, that the bacteria and so much of vermicompost is the living soil, the biology that's within it. And that's the bacteria and stuff that allows nitrogen to fix better to the roots, better oxygenation in the soil and that sort of stuff as well. So the bacteria can go dormant after a while, but after you put water on it, we find that the cultures immediately come back to life and flourish and go back to the nutrient-rich soil that it once was. So we have tested vermicompost as far as 3 years old and seen that it has a similar nutrient profile to the fresh stuff that we are producing right now. So, I mean, I wouldn't keep it if it were 20 years old. That might be too long, but a couple of years and it's still going to be good. Just make sure you water it in, and you kind of have to anyways. And you sprinkle it on the plant, it's very dry. You put water on it. I mean, you do water your plants, hopefully. Otherwise, you are going to have a hard time gardening if you don't water it. So when you just water it in, it will, you know, the colonies will start, you know, populating once again.
All right, I see there's another question in the chat about the recording. We will have a recording of this on our town hall page on the MSU recycling website in just a short little while after we get it posted. And Chris does a great job of including a marker within that YouTube recording so that you know where you can find the information that you're looking to hear again. To follow up on the plastics, please do not crush your bottles or your tubs. They are better left uncrushed for us. Just makes it easier for us to see what it is, make sure that we're going to put it in the proper bunker within our material recovery facility during that sort process. And then it can be, you know, make sure it's reaching the right processor. Mm-hmm.
And on that also, please don't fill your tubs with other recycling stuff, even if it is accepted and creates something that kind of is like a turducken or something like that, that we've created a couple of social media posts where if you had like a number 2 stuff with a bunch of crushed water bottles, that makes it hard for us to be able to sort as well.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. We look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future, and make sure that you stay in touch with us with any questions or comments or suggestions. And we hope that you all continue to do your best, like we know you are, with reducing your waste. So have a great day, everybody, and go green.
White. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.